And now you're faced with a choice of, do you take the vax or do you not feed your family? And that's a tough choice. But that's your choice to make. The administration has made their choice. They get to make their choice. You get to make yours. Each of you have to live with that choice the rest of your life. We have to protect our liberty, and that's what this is all about. It's not about a vaccine. It's not about lockdowns. It's about protecting our liberty.
Very much. Let's give a big hand for Dr. Ortiz. Our next speaker will be our infamous Senator Hall, who will be sharing a word and just giving you a greeting. So Senator Hall, let's give him a big hand, please. He's a trooper for fighting for you people, all of us.
Wow, good to see you guys here today. This is kind of neat. How many healthcare workers do we have here today? All right, that's for you guys, that is what you've been doing. We thank you so much. I see there are a lot of new faces out here because I'm from East Texas. That's why it took me so long to get here today. It's a long drive here, but I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to give you any medical advice today. That's up to you guys. I will repeat what doctors have told me from time to time, but I'm just an engineer. I'm a businessman. Some try to tag me as a politician. I will tell you, truthfully, I'm a recovering political apathetic, is what I am. As I spent most of my life doing things other than politics. It was my wife that got messed up in politics. And I'm not defined by this job. I'm defined by my relationship with my Lord Jesus Christ, because I'm a Christian first. And a father and husband second, and serving the people of Texas comes next. But it's time that we stood up. It's time for us to stand up. And don't forget that you are the government. Our government is made up of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the problem we have today is that too many people have abdicated their responsibility to pay attention to what's going on and to do something about it. And unfortunately, we got too many elected officials who seem to have forgotten that the primary purpose of government is to protect individual rights, not to provide free stuff. Many individuals across our state and nation are facing a devastating choice, whether to take a vaccine they do not want or to leave their jobs, forfeiting their means to provide financially for themselves. And the government is using fear. That is the tool that they have used to put us where we are. It is fear that drove us into accepting the lockdowns. It was fear that drove us to accept the message that if you got the COVID, you're going to die. And fear that was used to tell you if you didn't wear a mask, you're going to get the COVID. Or if you didn't stay inside and you stuck your head out the front door, you were going to get it and die. You remember when they told us in March that if we didn't shut down, we would have 250,000 Texans dead by August? That was another lie too, along with much of others of what they have told us. People who don't understand the true role of government, and I'm going to talk more about our role in government and government itself and what responsibilities we have than I am about the COVID. I'm going to leave that to the doctors to talk about the vaccines and the problems we are faced with there. I'm going to talk about who we are in liberty, who we are as a nation, and what we must protect. But in this, with the issue with the vaccine, it is the argument we're having in Austin about what is the role of government. And there are those who believe that we are not to tell businesses what to do. That's up to them. And I've said to them, folks, we tell businesses what to do all day long. We tell them when they can open, when they can close, what they can sell. We even tell the business where you work what size toilet seat they have to have in each of the bathrooms. So don't tell me we don't tell businesses what to do. We do that. And as far as the vaccine goes, this thing has gone way farther than anything else we've ever had before. I mean, when we right now, last month reporting over almost 16,000 people dead reported in the VAERS system, and the data, and I'm not sure if they've spoken about this yet, or what was recently we got from CMS showing 45,000 of our Medicare patients dead. You know, some of you don't remember 1976. I do here, but we had 45 million people vaccinated for the swine flu. And a mere 53, and I don't mean that in any disrespectful way because any one death is serious. But think about 40 million vaccinated and only 53 died. And they shut the vaccine down and it has not seen the light of day since then. I don't understand where the thinking is because I really believe that the picture that's driving the vaccine is much bigger than the vaccine itself. But the main thing is we must never, ever forget that the primary purpose of American form of constitutional government is to first protect the liberties of the individuals from business and government. And that's what I've been trying to do. I've got 5 bills now filed that all address the issue of mandatory vaccines. 5 different approaches. There's got to be a group of 16 senators there that can agree with one of those. Most of them are around protecting individual rights. And what's so important is we are truly at a tipping point today. You've all heard the story about the frog in the cold water and slowly turning the heat up. Folks, we're past lukewarm. We're at the real warm stage. And if we don't stand and do something today, our frog is going to be cooked, but good. They are well on their way to having absolute, complete control every day of every aspect of our life. When you have a Congress up there is contemplating a bill that's going to require your bank to report every action that you take over $600, you have got to believe that they want to know everything that you're doing. And that's where they're going with this. But folks, we've got a responsibility. We must not let those that have gone before us that sacrificed so much so that we could just be here today doing what we're doing here today. If we don't, I will assure you meetings like this will not be allowed very, very much longer. They will be stopped. It's not just social media that's doing this. You will have the government stopping this. You see what the government has already done where they've taken a Department of Justice that was set up to address foreign terrorists after 9/11 that has now been set up to go after parents that speak at school board meetings. If you don't think that is a government that is turning on us, you need to wake up, folks, because they are. You know, our founding fathers, and we refer to them as a bunch of old men. Do you realize that the average age was 44 of those who signed the Declaration of Independence? And we had some that couldn't even vote today that were signing it. Don't even qualify to get a tattoo. Yet they signed the Constitution. James Monroe. Everybody remembers James Monroe. He was only 18. Aaron Burr was 20. But they were also very wise because they carefully studied over 5,000 years of republics in the world. And they aligned the good parts out of those with biblical principles. Because don't ever let anybody ever tell you we are not a Christian nation. Our nation was formed on Christian principles. And don't ever let anybody tell you God is not a conservative. He makes it real clear in the Bible. Believe me, you go to Ecclesiastes 10:2. What does he say there? The heart of the righteous leans to the right, the heart of the wicked leans to the left. If that doesn't get you, go on up to Matthew's, where he says he's going to put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. I got one more. He's also into the free enterprise system. What did he do when he showed up on the shore and Peter had been fishing all night and hadn't caught a thing? What did he tell him? Peter, lower your net on the right side of the boat. Folks, there are 150 more of those if you go look for them, but I won't give you all those today. But our roots, we are grounded in biblical principles. Before the first settlers even set foot on this continent with the Mayflower Compact, they wrote it for the glory of God and mentioned God several times in establishing that compact. In our Declaration of Independence in 1776, we hold these truths to be evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Folks, without liberty, there is no life to pursue happiness. We have to protect our liberty, and that's what this is all about. It's not about a vaccine. It's not about lockdowns. It's about protecting our liberty. And in our Constitution, one of the, probably I consider the second greatest document ever written, it's right behind the Bible, is we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity, do ordain this Constitution. Folks, that was the foundation. And what were they talking about when they talked about liberty? They're talking about liberty means limited government, fiscal responsibility, personal responsibility, free markets, freedom of liberties of individuals, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, assembly, petition the government, self-defense, to own property. You know, I read a book once that was given to me, and nothing happens by accident. I mean, everything. None of you are here by accident today. You all could have been somewhere else, but you ended up here. And I don't know what you're going to get out of this from all of what happened, but something here is going to be profound in your life from this, from what I'm saying. But there are a lot of really smart people talking to you today. But nothing happens by accident. I was at a meeting, and a young man brought me a book, and he said, I was in Memphis, Tennessee last month and ran into this guy at a book fair. And we talked about where we're from, and he says, oh, you live out in Van Zandt County? And he said, you know Bob Hall? And he says, yeah. He said, give him this book. And so he handed him a book to give to me. And so when he handed it to me, I looked at that book, and I said, you got to be kidding me. It was called Through the Golden Door. Didn't have a cover that would attract my attention. The title didn't get my attention. But it turned out he actually lived in Rockwall, so I don't know why he didn't give it to me himself, but he did. But I was intrigued, and so I started reading it. It turns out that the author, Ali Masters, was born a Pakistani Muslim in a wealthy family. And he was sent to America to go to school, and he went to North Texas, where he met a lot of people. He met a young lady there who was a Christian, and they dated for a while, and one day she told him, he says, you know, we're getting too serious. We're going to have to end this because we are not equally yoked. And they did. But his life changed when he decided what path he really wanted to go on. He accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as his Savior, and they got back together. They got married, had a very successful business, raised 4 kids, and he now lives in Rockwall. But he had in that book, as I read about his story, it was very interesting, the story, the way he told his life. But he had one statement in there that just kind of jumped off the page at me. And it was probably one of what I consider one of the most profound statements I've read that just kind of answered a lot of questions, and it was a real simple one. It simply said this, you know, most Americans do not appreciate liberty because they have never lost it. And that is so true, folks. We take it for granted. You remember in the movie, anybody seen the movie Braveheart? Where he stretched out there, and what is he hollering? Freedom! Freedom, freedom. They're ripping his guts out. And that's all he could think about was what man was put on earth for was to live in freedom. And many people equate freedom with liberty. In one of my real heroes, Ronald Reagan, he said, "Freedom is never more than one generation from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on to the next generation for them to do the same. Or one day, we'll spend our sunset years telling our children and grandchildren what it was once like to live in America that was free." And nothing could be truer. And we are certainly on that path. But think about what people have given up or what they have done so that we could be here. Think about the men and women that suffered through the formation of our country. Think about the men who boarded those boats on Christmas Eve and crossed the Delaware into Princeton to give the Americans the first major victory, and what they went through to craft this country. And right here in Texas, a few years later, 185 years ago today, the Army at San Jacinto, they'd lost battle after battle after battle, not very successful. And they were on the run. Santa Anna was right behind them. Ended up getting them kind of trapped at San Jacinto between Buffalo Creek and the San Jacinto River. And so they were faced with no place to go but to stand and fight. And they knew it was coming the next morning. But they also knew the enemy had a weak spot from a spy they had. She was called the Yellow Rose of Texas. Some of you read about her. But she said the Mexican army was so sure of what they were going to be able to do because they were greatly outnumbered. But they had a habit in the afternoon of taking a siesta. And so because of the terrain, the Texas ragtag army as it was could sneak up while they were taking their siesta unseen till they were just within a few yards of them and attack. And in 17 minutes, they had killed 630, wounded another 208, and captured the other 730. And Texas became a nation because they stood their ground. They would not back up. They wouldn't back down. They stood and fought for liberty for them and their country. And folks, we're at the point we have no place to go. If Texas falls, where are you going to go? New York? California? No. The rest will go down farther than we do. We have got to stand. We have got to stand and fight. And it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. But those choices that those men and women made at every battle they were in were tough ones. Our founding fathers lost. Most of them lost their fortune, their lives, many of them. We had men and women in every battle that made that tough choice. And I know you're coming up with some choices here of putting a job up is in jeopardy. But let me kind of wrap it up with my thoughts on that. You know, there are only three things that you actually have any control over, that you are totally in control of. And I'm going to give them to you backwards. One of them are the principles by which you live. No one has any control over that except you. You choose those principles. Number two is your attitude. Nobody can give you an attitude. You have to choose it for yourself. And number three are the choices that you make. Those three things you have absolute control over. And you're going to have a choice. And you've made choices already. Many of you made choices to stay in that hospital working many hours when you would rather be someplace else. You were there choosing when you had fear of what was going to happen to you in the early days when we didn't know what the COVID was going to do. You had fear, but you stayed and chose even when you had dirty PPE and a mask you may have worn for 2 or 3 days because you couldn't get another one and they told you had to wear it. And you may have chosen to keep wearing it when you could hardly breathe. But you stayed there, you did your job, and you did it well. And now you're faced with a choice of do you take the vax or do you not feed your family? And that's a tough choice. But that's your choice to make. The administration has made their choice. They get to make their choice. You get to make yours. Each of you have to live with that choice the rest of your life. You can't go home and take the vaccine off. I don't need to tell you that. It's not like a pair of steel-toed shoes or a helmet. That is for life. But I can tell you, if we don't stand for the principles by which we live and our values for our children and our grandchildren, they will suffer more than we will ever suffer for doing it. And it's time that we took back our country. It's time that we do what needs to be done. It's time to remember that our God is our Creator God and there is no other God. We must return to being a Christian nation and recognize that the purpose of government is to protect liberty, not to be providing free stuff. It is time to get prayed up, to stand up, to speak up, to act up. Because I can promise you, in trying to protect liberties, I will never back up, back down, backslide, compromise, cave, or collapse. I will stand and fight for our liberties with every fiber of my body until the last warm breath leaves my cold, dead body, and I hope you'll do the same. God bless you, and God bless Texas. Thank you.
Our local hero, yay!
Thank you all for what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hall. He is one of our heroes in Austin. He's not in my district, but he's still my hero. I support him, and I hope you all do too. And when he comes up for re-election, be there voting for him.